Sometimes I feel like the whole endeavor is fighting writer's block. Because as soon as they know not only that you're funny, but that you're consistently funny, they want more and more and more, and it's endless. I filled a small theater outside of Binghamton, New York, which I don't normally do, and killed. Had a great night. The next day, the owner of the theater calls me and wants me back immediately. Now, I did 90 minutes of material, and he's like, a lot of people want to see you again. So for me to go on as a successful comedian, I need to not only have written another entirely different 90 minutes of material, I need to have it memorized with no notes and make it sound spontaneous, like I'm talking off the top of my head. It's so demanding. I had no idea how much work stand-up comedy would be before I got into it. In less than 2 months, I wrote, rewrote, revised, and edited a book. And the stand-up comedy special I'm filming in February, I've been working on that material for 4 years. Just to put it into perspective, how labor-intensive comedy is. Despite what a lot of people assume, stand-up comedy is not a monologue. It's a dialogue, because laughter has different shapes and sizes and durations. And comedy is a dialogue between the comedian and the people responding to the comedy. If you don't have laughter, you're not doing comedy. To make an audience of strangers laugh uncontrollably, like laugh outside of their own control, takes a comedic mentality. There's a certain way to phrase things that naturally lends itself towards getting a reaction out of people. You have to think comedically, what sequence of words works to make people react. And off the top of my head, I can think of several. Like, if this were, and then you just fill in the blank. If you're doing a small show, like a crowd of, I've done thousands of small shows. If you're doing a small show, like a crowd of 10 people, you use this setup, if this were. Like, if this were any more intimate, we would need lubricant. I share needles with more people than this. The 3 words, if this were, set yourself up for something funny. Same thing with if I had. You know what's worse? Don't you think that I would never, I would love to, you can't, like that one, you can't just, fill in the blank. You can't just shoot people. This isn't a school. Why would anyone? The only thing, I didn't think it was possible to. The only reason, I never thought. The only time, why would I? Why would you? There is no way. Along with thinking comedically and phrasing things appropriately, there's certain tricks to doing that. First off, never use the same words in the setup of a joke as you do in the punchline. Because if you say them in the setup, repeating those words in the punchline, the same words, takes the power out of those words. Second of all, in writing comedically, you want the concept of the joke to come together in the very last word of the punchline. For example, I downloaded an album by Amy Winehouse and my phone died. Say what you want about cheap motels, but there's something charming to coming back to a room in which a maid dusted around your cocaine. This one comes together in the very last word as well, but I've found that people don't always get this concept in the first second or two after I say it. So I usually have to wait about 4 seconds for people to respond. A lot of hookers suck at their job. So as I said, you don't want to use the same words in the punchline that you did in the setup, but sometimes there's exceptions to this rule. Like, If you go to prison for unlawful assembly and drop this soap, you may experience unlawful assembly. Another sort of sleight of hand or trick you can use when you're doing stand-up is to intentionally kind of screw up the setup to a joke or the syntax to a setup for a joke just to make it sound like you're talking off the top of your head. Like this example from my album, Humor Trafficking.
That was the 80s. I was born in 1980. I'm the same age as AIDS. I am. Not nearly as popular.
That joke also has a false punchline where I get a small laugh from I'm the same age as AIDS. And people think that's the punchline, but the real clever part is what follows it. I'm not nearly as popular. I used to gamble by getting New York City street permits for $45. They last 6 hours, and then I would do 6 hours of ad-libbing on the street to see if I could make my money back. The first year I did it, I didn't make any money. I couldn't even get people to stop and listen to me. Then after a year, I started getting people to stop and listen. After another year, I started making money. You get better at comedy. I truly believe anybody can do comedy or learn it. There's a common debate in stand-up, and that is there anything off the table? Is there anything comedically that you shouldn't talk about? Personally, I don't think so. I think you should be able to talk about anything you want in your stand-up. If people don't like what you have to say, they can always leave and write a blog about it.
I don't know. I love my family. I want to go on to Ancestry.com to figure out my lineage. Their commercials are terrible. I want an honest Ancestry.com commercial. Something a little more racy, you know? Something like, I went on to Ancestry.com and I was surprised to find out my great-grandfather raped a bearded midget on a hot dog cart so gypsies could steal wieners. Then he sold the afterbirth at a flea market to Klan members. My great-grandmother's the first known person to get pregnant by giving a blowjob. My uncle intentionally asphyxiated his bottleneck goiter head in the ass of a three-legged Clydesdale at a Budweiser rodeo. My fucking aunt bit the head off a snake in a Pearl Jam video, then ran amok stabbing quadriplegics at a breathing tube convention. She was found hanging nude from a jungle gym at an orphanage. My grandmother drowned a nursery in a sewage bog on Christmas, and she was married to the original guy who fucked the AIDS monkey. And I'm Scottish. Well, I am happy to be here. It only took, 6 passes on the road to find the place? That's it. I'd rather pass 6 kidney stones. It was ridiculous. Can somebody tell him prohibition is over? You don't need to hide. It's ridiculous. I'm going to call this place the G-Spot because it's gangster and it's impossible to find. There's like 50 shades of Caucasian in here. Holy shit. If you didn't know, drinking in a barn is the whitest thing you can do. I watched a couple of your videos to get ready for the show. I thought it was good. But there was one that was a video of like a local news broadcast. And they did the stereotypical local news thing where they picked the wrong person to interview. They're like, that guy looks like a professor. Let's go with the guy who has a facial tattoo. We're gonna interview him. they interviewed somebody at like your grand opening, and she's like, I didn't know whiskey could come in different flavors. I was like, I didn't know you couldn't know that whiskey comes in different flavors. Dude, water comes in different flavors. Of course fucking whiskey comes in different. And then they interviewed the distiller, and she was like, it was really important for us to make a product that was gluten-free. And I was like, that's good for people with celiac disease. But I looked it up. It's not a noble ambition. All whiskey is gluten-free. All of it. You want to do something really ambitious? Make a vodka that'll allow me to pass a breathalyzer.